Approximately 1 year and 4 months have passed since the Billions Season 6 conclusion, which I dubbed The Biggest Losers. And if the 7th season premiere is any indicator, I still feel the same way about the majority of the Billions characters. In many ways, since this is the Showtime financial crime drama's final season, it's inevitable that we want to know who of these megalomaniacs will win. Will it be aristocratic man of the people Charles Rhodes Jr., whose efforts to jail dishonest finance bros increasingly belie his own ambitions for power? Will it be millionaire Mike Prince, who is running for president in a similar manner to another unsettling dark horse? Will it be Bobby Axelrod, the prodigal son of Billions who recently made a comeback to the show after eluding federal prosecution in the Season 5 finale? Or will it be Dr. Wendy Rhodes, Axe's former confidant and reportedly the only character in the Billions universe who can detect Prince's developing demagoguery? Every character in Billions would end up experiencing irreparable devastation if there is any justice in the world. This writer then pauses to giggle at herself after spelling out such a stupid concept. Succession, however, had demonstrated in its own series finale that it was never about who won and who lost. However, Billions, that other billionaire-focused television program, has long shown that its storyline isn't about winning or losing, but rather how the game is played. Like previous season debuts, Tower of London is dominated by player positioning for a large portion of the episode. This necessity is excused within the first few seconds of the episode, since we are given a doozy of a cold open. Looking for Wendy, a furious Mike Prince storms into Mike Prince Capital and smashes what appears to be a printer, or was it a CPU? I couldn't tell, against the glass pane of the performance coach's office. Wendy is inside, because some enraged tyrants only toss ketchup bottles while others throw heavy equipment. Surprisingly, Prince's aggression is not what disturbs people the most. The fact that this polite Midwestern man uses the letter F 3 times in less than a minute is what bothers me. Prince avoids using foul language to maintain his upstanding reputation. In the end, Wendy did something that badly harmed Prince's presidential campaign, and now Prince is pursuing Wendy. As we cut to 5 months earlier, it's likely that discovering out exactly what Wendy did here will be a season-long narrative. Wendy is summoned by Prince to the empty MPC offices for what at first seems to be a protracted therapy session. But he ends up revealing 2 shocking facts. 1. He is vying for the presidency in 2024 rather than 2028. 2. His authoritarian platform sounds like Donald Trump's second coming. If Wendy agrees to become a member of his inner circle, Prince will offer her unheard-of access and authority. All she has to do is point out his flaws. Prince doesn't take long to remove the mask of the upstanding citizen and begin describing how his ruthlessness can mend our broken nation. But unlike a specific past president who has been charged 3 times, Prince takes after a specific fictitious drug lord. In response to Harry Truman's well-known "The Buck Stops Here" sign, he intends to post a sign that reads, "I am the Buck," on his desk in the Oval Office. Wendy had a whole season to figure out Prince's dictatorial tendencies, so I'm not sure why she's now like yikes. It's time for some confidential egg foo yum of wags right now. However, first, some additional updates. Chuck Rhodes was no longer serving as New York State's Attorney General when we last saw him, and he and his deputy, Davisha Dave Maher, had struck a dubious deal. He would secretly cooperate with Dave to bring down Prince in exchange for his release from prison under supervision. But being in the dark is something Chuck despises even more than not being in control. Chuck is chafing at being a pariah and having to wear an ankle monitor, things that would make the public think that he is working with Dave. But it turns out that Dave isn't keeping him informed of her plans. Speaking of chafing, Taylor Mason is currently experiencing that feeling towards Mike Prince as well. Along with Prince's prodigy Philip Charon, Taylor, who oversees the environmentally minded Taylor Mason Carbon, a special project under the Michael Prince Capital umbrella, obtains an empty promotion. With just one significant sacrifice, the sunsetting of Taylor Mason Carbon, they will jointly manage MPC while Prince concentrates on his presidential campaign. Subsequent scenes all take place during a literal dark and stormy night, suggesting that Snoopy wrote them. Chuck and Dave have that unsettling midnight rendezvous in the cemetery of the Rhodes family, during which Chuck complains endlessly about a contract he accepted. In addition, Wendy and Wags are scheduled to dine together at Will Hop, Midge and Lenny's favorite Chinatown restaurant. For the aforementioned egg foo young, they may even be at the same table. Only now has Wendy concluded that Prince is dangerous, thus she needs Wags' assistance in getting in touch with Axe. primarily because Wags rarely takes himself seriously, but when he does, he typically is attentively listening to Wendy. In this monologue, Wendy makes her case to Wags and frames herself as the social justice advocate Chuck claims to be, and the one Taylor wishes they could be if they weren't so fixated on the all-powerful dollar. This does not imply that I believe Wendy will emerge as the good guy this season. She has done so much harm that I could never make such a claim about her. But we do need a stand-in for all the discouraged Americans who watched as their compatriots originally brushed off Donald Trump as a serious threat to democracy, much like Wags is doing with Prince. Even though Wags is adamant that he can't contact Axe, he still presses Wendy for further evidence that a Prince presidency would be comparable to one under Trump. Mike Prince is quickly identified by psychiatrist Wendy as a narcissist with a textbook God complex. She then poses a question to Wags, one, regrettably, we have all had to respond to in the past. Do you really want this guy in charge of the nuclear codes? She forewarns Wags that Prince won't be hindered by moral restraints like bureaucracy and red tape. Fair enough, when has anyone appeared on this show? But yeah, in case you weren't convinced, this plotline is a critique of the Donald Trump presidency and its consequences in billions. Wendy is of the opinion that Prince needs to be stopped before he is elected, because otherwise, in Prince's words, the country will scream. Her only hope is Axel Juan Kenobi. However, contacting a millionaire wanted for numerous federal financial offenses is more difficult than just slipping into his DMs. Fortunately, Wendy is the expert on Axe. Maffei is responsible for his trading methods. Wendy is gradually building up her support system thanks to Wags, who could totally get a message to his former boss. Maffei, who has plenty of free time now that his shop with Dollar Bill exploded. More on that in Loose Change. And Taylor, who isn't quite ready to join this scheme yet. I say slowly because despite Taylor's initial reluctance, an obvious Hitler illusion eventually convinced them to join Wendy and Wags. Taylor joins the Rebel Alliance at Lightspeed after realizing that Prince won't change his mind about wanting to kill Taylor Mason Carbon, and that he has no qualms about casually referencing the future fascist dictator's 1929 hammer and anvil speech. Chuck is another person gaining new allies. He creates a laudatory feature piece referring to himself as the Robin Hood of New York, since he is sick of waiting for Dave to include him in her scheme and of being cancelled. And story that eventually results in Chuck being hailed as a public hero alongside AOT, Elizabeth Warren, and Bernie Sanders. Because Chuck has always known one thing: to bring charges against someone who is so adored by the public is really difficult. By the episode's conclusion, marches are being planned in honor of Chuck, which naturally results in the dismissal of all charges, and a new rivalry between Chuck Rhodes and Dave Mahar on Billions. Shame though, because I've always been a member of Team Dave. But it's quite disheartening that she's just now coming to the realization that Chuck set the whole thing up, and that she never anticipated Chuck would try to steal her authority. Unaware that making his only friend into an enemy is on Chuck Rhodes' daily to-do list is a beginner error. Even though I was interested in how Dave's deception would turn out, Chuck can't be operating undercover in terms of the story, so here we are. The final few minutes of the episode feature Wendy's eagerly anticipated foreign reunion with Billions' fugitive billionaire, which was teased throughout the whole episode. Okay, so it's not quite in the light of day, but for a man who was last seen hiding up in Switzerland, Axe wandering around a popular tourist destination like the Tower of London represents a considerable about-face. Vladimir Putin is apparently to blame for that, as it turns out. By rebranding himself as a global armaments trader who essentially sponsored the Ukrainian military, Axe was able to repair his reputation. He boasts to Wendy that it bought me a great deal of goodwill all across the continent. Wendy makes her pleadings sound like Princess Leia without holding back. Unsurprisingly, Axe will require a little more persuasion, particularly since, like me, he is perplexed as to why Wendy is still hanging out at MPC in the first place. And guess who else is out on the Thames? Wags and Taylor are here, or as Axe refers to them as Luke, Leia, and Chewie, along with Wendy. Axe now identifies himself as Han and the Millennium Falcon. So much for Obi-Wan Kenobi, which is additional good news for the Rebel Alliance before the foursome departs together. I just don't feel comfortable enough with this partnership to trust it. Greetings, Billions?